Here's the one question, and Bob, I'm going to ask you two approaches. When you think about Barnabas and you think about scripture in light of the vision of Barnabas, there's two sides I would love for you to talk on. Number one is talk about an example of a leader who found his calling in scripture and God used that passion and used those skills to really be able to serve the kingdom. And the second question is talk about an example in the scripture in which a ministry or initiative in scripture was really helped by somebody who understood what their passions are, like a marketplace leader in Barnabas.
Okay. Our selection of the name for Barnabas was not accidental. Barnabas is a remarkable example that most people treat as a drive-by, and they've never stopped to really consider his story. He's introduced to us in the first church in Jerusalem just after Pentecost. The congregation has exploded in number. There are people who have come from around the known world to the Pentecost celebration. They were converted and stayed. And the fiscal resources to support those people were an immediate issue. There were two examples of some over and above stewardship that were offered to help fund the costs of that. One was Ananias and Sapphira, who made a pledge and didn't fulfill it. And that was a negative example. The other gets run past too frequently. It's in Acts 5, where we read of a Levite by the name of Joseph, who was from Cyprus, who sold a piece of property, brought the money, and laid it at the apostles' feet. And they named him Barnabas as a nickname, which means son of encouragement. You have to take that very concise description apart just a little bit. He was a Levite, meaning his family were the tribe that were entrusted with the religious leadership, but they were given no stake in the land of the perpetuity of the land that was given to Israel when they moved into the promised land. They had no stake in the economic life of Israel because they had no land that was entrusted to their tribe. They were supported by the other tribes. He was from Cyprus, not from Israel. In Cyprus, there would have been no standing for a Levite. So he, with no family structure, no land base to work from, he had become a businessman, and he owned a piece of property, and he sold that piece of property and brought that asset, monetary asset, to the apostles, gave it to them as a large capital gift.
Got it.
Now, there's a remarkable story in that he had to be a businessman who had stepped out of a family of ministry. And his success in his business had made it possible for him not just give as a percentage of his income stream, but taking from a segment of his wealth. Was it his only asset, or was it simply one of his assets? We don't know. Whatever it was, when you see assets turned into cash flow and all of the proceeds brought to ministry, God's up to something. We could have written him off as a significant donor and forgotten him, but we discover that he keeps popping up in the story. And what becomes amazing about Barnabas is he has an eye for leaders that are on their way up. The next appearance of Barnabas is when he takes the Apostle Paul under his wing as a new convert that no one trusted. He's new in faith. He's been persecuting and killing Christians, and now he's back in the new members class in Jerusalem's church. And no one trusts him. And Barnabas puts his arm around him, trusts him, and to protect him, sends him off to be undercover for a few years until the heat dials back. When Barnabas is sent to pastor the church in Antioch that had, by God's sovereign design, exploded into being but had no leadership, Barnabas, before he arrives in Antioch, stops to pick Paul up along the way and bring him to make him his understudy. And Paul's development, his protection in his earliest faith experience, his development in learning the practice of ministry, happens under Barnabas' oversight. And then when the partnership is strained after the first trip, when they're ready to go, and John Mark, who failed in the first journey, is on the roster for the second. Paul
Yeah.
doesn't want to take him. Barnabas does. Why? Because Barnabas' calling was to raise up new leaders.
Got it. Yeah.
And so we saw a remarkable picture in Barnabas' life of what we aspired Barnabas to become, the movement. And that was to be people who recognize stewardship in an extraordinary way by finding assets less valuable than the underwriting of ministry. But even more than that, to find that opens the door to gain a new identity. Joseph was his name at birth.
Yeah.
Barnabas is his name through the demonstration of his contribution, son of encouragement. And then Barnabas becomes a mentor to leaders who are on their way up.
Got it.
And we saw the Barnabas group, as an opportunity to mentor ministry leaders who are already good but could be better.
Got it.